Hello everyone and welcome to another video. Now I'm going to be winding down and likely pausing the mini PC videos for a while as we move into the new year. Before I do though, I have a couple of ideas in my head that I need to get out, the first of which we are exploring today. How do the best integrated graphics compare to these two excellent 1080p graphics cards? Two of my favourites in fact. The test system for today's video was provided by Beelink, hence why I've added the paid promotion label to this video. Beelink are always very supportive of my shenanigans and seemed pretty chill with the idea of me focusing on gaming instead of the AI and workstation stuff that a $2,000 system like this is more geared towards. This chunky little beast is the GTR9 Pro. It's got a Ryzen AI Max Plus 395, 128 gigs of 8000 MHz soldered LPDDR5X, a 2TB SSD and most notably Radeon 8060S graphics. Out of the box it came with 96 gigs of memory reserved for the iGPU, leaving 32 for the system. We can change this, but I'm not going to. I compared another 8060S based system to a 4060 a while ago, and while that made for an interesting experiment where the two traded blows, some of you complained that I limited the Radeon iGPU's VRAM to 8 gigs. Lesson learnt this time around. Everything including the power supply is encased within this solid frost silver cube, and around the outside we have USB 4 and USB 3.2 ports, HDMI 2.1 and DisplayPort 2.1 connectors, audio jack, microphone array, fingerprint sensor, SD 4.0 card slot and dual 10 gigabit Ethernet ports. Now from what I've heard there have been some issues regarding the Ethernet connectivity, such as disconnection and crashing. According to a couple of Beelink forums, they are waiting on a driver update from Intel. This seems to be the case at the time of this video's upload. I noticed this myself with Ark Raiders. The game froze up on the home screen and the Ethernet connection just disappeared. I could only resolve this by unplugging the PC and reconnecting the cable. I reached out to Beelink, who as of the 16th of December said there is no ETA on the update. Outside of this one game, I didn't experience any other connectivity problems, but if you're interested in one of these machines, then it may be worth waiting out for an update before you buy, using a USB to Ethernet adapter or sticking to Wi-Fi. I'll post any updates as a pinned comment below. That of course doesn't mean we can't check out the gaming performance, because iGPUs really have come a long way, and I'm always talking about this, but I feel like we need to add some more context. So I've set the GTR9 Pro to performance mode, and here it will peak at 140 watts under load. Balanced mode is 120. This power difference will be represented in games by a few frames per second and of course different noise levels. The two graphics cards we'll be comparing the 8060S to are the AMD Radeon RX 6600, an 8GB GPU that still puts up a decent fight in 1080p gaming, and the RTX 3060, a card that continues to offer solid performance thanks to its 12 gigs of VRAM. In some cases, these are actually selling on the used market for more than the 8GB Ti version. The 3060 and 6600 are paired with an i9 14900K as well as 32 gigs of 6400 MHz system RAM. The 3060, 6600 and 8060S are the limiting factors as part of their respective systems today, so we don't have to worry about any CPU bottlenecks. Let's throw up some gameplay results then and take a look at the comparisons. Now the first game I tried is Forza Horizon 4. I've been getting back into this lately. Nothing beats racing around the British countryside in a few of my favourite cars, only to be overtaken by a white Ford Transit van. Just like real life, no matter how fast you're going, there's always a white van going quicker. The Radeon 8060S managed a huge 213 frames per second here with a 1% of 183 and a 0.1% low of 144. This actually did better than both the RX 6600 and 3060. The 3060 actually came in at the bottom here, so I'm presuming that this one favours AMD graphics. All of the results were very good, and I've ordered the results in terms of how well they've done when it comes to the average frame rates, so bear that in mind. You may find that some hardware offered more consistent gameplay experiences, which is arguably just as or perhaps even more important in some scenarios. Battlefield 6 is up next at 1080p once again with the high preset and TAA. Now I've stuck with 1080p throughout this video, but I think the 8060S as well as the other GPUs could handle higher than this. In Battlefield 6 with the high preset we were seeing 94 frames per second from the Radeon 8060S integrated graphics. This came with pretty consistent percentile lows of 72 and 67, so it was a very smooth experience indeed. The 3060 fell just short of this with 86 frames per second, the percentile lows were also a little worse, and the RX 6600 hit 72 frames per second. Again, this was a decent result, and very rarely did this drop below 60 frames per second. In fact, this was also super smooth, looking at those percentile lows of 62 and 58. When it comes to GTA 5 Enhanced, I wasn't sure how the Radeon 8060S as part of the Beelink system would handle this one, because I have had some experiences in the past whereby this doesn't agree with iGPUs, but I think that was perhaps more common with the Legacy edition of the game. Mostly I would get like performance dips and drops, but here with the 8060S we were getting 85 frames per second overall, a 1% low of 67 and a 0.1% low of 60, so nothing really to complain about in terms of performance and consistency here. That said, this was bested by the RTX 3060 desktop GPU, which hit 100 frames per second, so quite a significant jump in performance. The 8060S still did better than the RX 6600, which did manage 63 FPS, so plus 60 FPS here, though it experienced a few more problems when it came to the percentile figures. Still, a decent experience for what is one of my favourite budget AMD cards in 2025. Next up we have Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 at 1080p with the Ultra preset. Now the only one of our integrated, oh I've given it away there, spoiler alert, the only one of our graphics solutions that could manage at least 60 FPS with the Ultra preset was the 8060S. The performance you're seeing on screen here just involves me running around the town causing a little bit of chaos. I wouldn't recommend necessarily the Ultra preset for any of these graphical solutions today, but the 8060S is capable of this with SMAA2TX here. We're averaging 68 frames per second, the 1% low was 55 and the 0.1% low was 54, so very smooth indeed. The 12GB 3060 came in second place with about 10 frames per second less. The percentile lows were also noticeably lower here at 47 and 45. The RX 6600 came in with about 10 frames less yet again, so it's sort of a decrease of 10 frames between each graphical solution here. 48 FPS for this one with a 1% low of 39 and a 0.1% low of 38. I'd probably recommend sticking to high graphics, honestly, with all of these. But who'd have thought we'd be running at ultra settings on a game that released in 2025 with no discrete graphics card. A great effort from the iGPU here. But you are certainly paying for performance like this, as I haven't seen it as part of any lower cost or what I would call budget systems. I tested Cyberpunk twice. The first was with the Ultra preset and the high crowds with high textures. The Radeon 8060S came out on top yet again with a very nice 69 FPS, but it did suffer a little bit in terms of the percentile lows. We saw 48 and 42. So it wasn't necessarily inconsistent, but there were a few dips and drops from that average, especially in busier parts of Night City. I'd say that the 3060, which came in at second place, was a little more consistent despite exhibiting a lower average FPS. This time it was 66, the 1% low was 50, and the 0.1% low was however 47. The 6600 also did a pretty decent job, 54 frames per second. With this one I'd probably recommend sticking to high. The 1 and 0.1% lows were 37 and 32 respectively. Now I didn't expect the 8060S to remain on top as we moved into the ray tracing result here. I'm also using FSR. This is FSR 3 quality mode. The 3060 came out on top with 57 FPS, so this wasn't able to hit that magic 60 FPS here, but it did remain quite smooth. The 8060S hit 49 with a 1% low of 33 and a 0.1% low of 26. So a few more noticeable problems with this one here. Not so much as with the RX 6600 though, which still managed at least 30 FPS, so this was better than I was expecting, especially considering we're using the RT Ultra preset, but those percentile lows do leave a little to be desired. For Red Dead Redemption 2, this is another one that has had a few issues with certain integrated solutions in the past, but I found that turning async compute on or off from within the system file in your documents can have an impact on performance and sometimes make things smoother or less smooth, depending on whether you change it to on or off. I think here it was on, and we were getting well over 60 frames per second with the 8060S integrated solution here. The average was actually 83. This was bested by the 3060, which pulled ahead by about 9 frames per second, but I'd argue that the 8060S delivered a more smooth experience overall. The 1 and 0.1% low was 67 and 63, whereas with the 3060 it was 72 and 36. The 6600 also performed really nicely, 80 frames per second, with again a decent percentile low, 64 and 61. Baldur's Gate 3 exhibited a few problems here. 89 FPS was the average with the 8060S iGPU, but the 1 and 0.1% lows of 43 and 27 did mean that we were seeing a few dips and drops, which were prevalent whether or not we were using the ultra or high graphical preset. The 3060 pulled ahead by at least 10 frames per second, and sure enough, had better percentile lows to go along with that higher average. The 8060S still beat the 6600 by a few frames, however that one was also a little smoother. 45 frames per second was the 1% low and 34 was that 0.1% low, but a decent effort from all cards involved. We'll finalise with Borderlands 4. This is the, I believe, 5th victory for the 8060S, so we've tested 9 games here, and I think the 8060S has come out on top in 5 of them, this time with 51 FPS. Now, there were a few dips and drops here, a few problems in and around the busier areas, but this was something that I experienced on the Nvidia card as well. The average there was 43. The 1% low was 34 and the 0.1% low was 17. So not too different from the 8060S in terms of bumps and stutters and whatnot. But surprisingly, in terms of consistency, the 6600 actually did the best. And when it comes to the average figure, it wasn't too dissimilar from the 3060 either. So overall, the Beelink GTR9 Pro isn't faultless. That Ethernet issue could affect some systems, or at least from what I've seen it certainly has done. I haven't experienced that since I received this system in anything other than Arc Raiders, and of course my main focus is always gaming, so I can't speak on whether or not certain applications and workloads will affect this, but as always I can only talk from personal experience, and my main focus is always on the iGPU side of things, which in terms of progression has come a very long way indeed. We're now looking at 3060, 4060 performance from nothing but an integrated solution, which is very impressive. As I mentioned before, you do have to pay quite a bit in order to get access to an iGPU like this, and it would be nice to see it come to some lower cost systems if that is at all on the cards. It would be pretty cool, but it's nice to get a glimpse at the future of iGPUs, and I hope you've enjoyed this one. Thanks to Beelink for sending out this unit. Enjoyed my time with it. As always, you know me, I'd always prefer to put together a desktop system from scratch, but I love making these comparisons, and I hope you have enjoyed watching as well. This has been a very fun PC to use, and an interesting one in terms of seeing how it stacks up against some of my favourite discrete graphics cards. Thanks as always, and hopefully I'll see all of you in the next one.